In the turbulent and blood-soaked 13th century, Edward I, King of England, needed to defend his realm. His favoured method? Expansion. His first target? Wales. To suppress these fearsome and often elusive warriors, Edward returned to the tactics of William the Conqueror. He created monumental structures like this, Conwy Castle.
Places like Conway represented a new pinnacle in castle building in Britain. They were statement pieces designed to impose a king's will on everyone who could see them.
For centuries, castles have loomed over the landscape of Britain. In this series, I'm exploring some of our greatest fortresses, investigating how they helped forge a nation, and discovering how you build a castle and how you tear one down. Conwy Castle stands commandingly on the north coast of Wales. It sternly guards the River Conwy and watches over this important water route into the heart of Wales. Since the conquest, the Normans had been focusing their efforts on the south of Wales, but by the 13th century, this northern area was becoming problematic. The Kingdom of Gwynedd had gained superiority in Conwy, and its ruler, Llywelyn, had been recognised as Prince of Wales by the English with the Treaty of Montgomery in 1267. But by 1280, the warlike King Edward I was on the throne of England, and tensions were growing.
The fragile peace that was agreed at Montgomery wouldn't last for long though. Soon the Welsh princes were rising in revolt again, and Edward decided to conquer Wales once and for all. By the early 1280s, he'd all but succeeded, and he began to build his famous ring of iron castles.
As Edward invaded and sought to gain a stranglehold on Wales, he built fortresses at Flint, Hawarden, Ruthlin, Builth, Aberystwyth, Denbigh, Carnarvon, Conwy, Harlech, and an unfinished masterpiece at Beaumaris. Carefully placed, these combined to help Edward encircle the north of Wales, earning the castles the nickname the Ring of Iron. But he had even bigger plans here at Conwy.
He didn't just build a castle, he surrounded it with more than a mile of town walls. What had once been the seat of Welsh princes was now an English plantation.
Edward enclosed a whole town, pushing the Welsh out and moving the English in. But Edward and his team of stonemasons were keen on a bit of recycling, reusing structures that had been built by the Welsh.
Outside Conway's castle here in the town walls is a hint, a clue of what used to be here. There are only 3 window seats that you'll find in Conway's walls, and they're here on the south side of the east wall. And they're a remnant of an old Welsh llys, a prince's palace that used to stand on this spot. They're a small fragment of the old, trapped forever within the new.
Like Bamborough, Conwy sits in a breathtaking coastal spot, visible to all in the surrounding areas. By the 1840s, the railway had come to Conwy. A bridge was built across the estuary and an arch was carved into the town walls to allow the trains in. It was created in a Gothic style following the medieval line of the wall and was designed to resemble the castle's crenellations. Today, the railway and the road sit comfortably alongside this 700-year-old fortress. The castle was originally accessed across a drawbridge that led to the West Barbican. There are two Barbicans at Conwy, the West and the East. They're fortified gateways that add an extra layer of defence, and on the West Barbican we can find some of the oldest machicolations in Britain.
What are machicolations? Well, they're these bits that jut out, and they were a defensive feature. If you were up there, it provides you with a shielded platform that was behind stone, but the space below allows you to drop hot water, sand, stones, maybe something a little bit gross, anything on someone who was trying to attack the castle. From down here though, you can imagine trying to get to that gate while avoiding all of those obstacles being thrown at you. If you were on that side, a great way to defend a castle.
Another daunting defensive feature at Conwy, just like Bamborough and Ludlow, is its thick curtain walls made from locally sourced stone. Inside the castle, you'll find everything you need to keep a royal fortress like this running. The Great Hall is where the king or the lord would do his entertaining.
But you'd also find the soldiers housed here, trades like cooks, carpenters and blacksmiths working away, all essential to keeping the castle functioning. But if you were to make it to the inner ward, the most defensible core of the castle, you'd find it's about two things. It's about comfort and about holding out against a siege.
Unlike Bamborough and Ludlow, Conwy doesn't have a central keep, but it does have defensive towers. These 8 circular 20-metre high towers watch over the town and river and are covered with arrow slits to aid their defence against any attackers. But the towers aren't just made for defensive purposes. Inside one of them is a rather special sanctuary.
In times of war or of peace, religion was at the core of medieval life. Every castle needed a chapel to cater to the spiritual needs of the community, and Conway's no different, but this one also holds a royal secret.
These beautiful stained glass windows were inspired by fragments of medieval stained glass and tell the story of the Welsh prince's struggle against Edward I. They contain both historical and contemporary scenes from the local area and give us an indication of the incredible colour that filled these walls. Tucked away, high up in the chapel wall, is a tiny window that was fit for a king.
Conway was a royal castle. It was built by a king for a king, and Edward meant to use it, but he didn't necessarily want to take his religious services down there with the hoi polloi. Conway's chapel has a watching chamber, a small room where Edward could come and watch the religious services through this small window without having to join the community of the castle down below. It perhaps speaks to the way that Edward liked to enjoy his privacy and his religious services. Edward must have been concerned about being caught short during religious services. His watching chamber comes with its own medieval castle toilet. These are amazing. They're just essentially a hole in the wall that drops all the way down.
But Edward needed a castle that wasn't just for living in. It had to be a fortress that would help him conquer this hostile land. To find out more about its construction and some of the people involved, I'm meeting an expert on the castles of Wales, Ashley Batten.
So when did they start this building? How long did it take?
It started in 1283 and it took about 9 years to fully complete the project, but most of the building work was undertaken in the first 4 or 5 years. Not just the castle on its own, the castle and the town wall were all built together as one piece. A really ambitious project and a huge spend. It cost £15,000 at the time, which is probably equivalent to about 11 million pounds today.
And I guess there must have been hundreds of people involved in the construction project, but do we see named individuals?
There's actually thousands of individuals involved, right from across England and Wales, but also some significant individuals from Savoy. Some of the key figures are Master James of St George, who is the sort of key architect of the castle, and John Francis, who's also an important mason, a master mason who comes with him.
What do we know about James of St George?
James of St George and John Francis, they arrive here together. They come from southern France, and they are part of the court of Philip of Savoy, and he is a cousin of Edward I. So Edward I finds out about the superb castles that have been constructed there, and he employs the master mason and architect of those castles to come and help with the Edwardian conquest of North Wales.
James of St George had been the mastermind behind several of Philip of Savoy's castles, and Edward liked what he saw. James oversaw the building of other castles in Wales at Carnarvon, Harlech, Ruthlin, Flint, and later at Beaumaris on Anglesey.
So what did James of St George find when he arrived here at Conwy?
Well, quite a lot actually. It's quite a busy area. We're obviously strategically on the estuary, and so there's lots of stuff happening here. We've got a Cistercian abbey on the site of Conwy itself, but on the other side of the Conwy estuary, we've got Conwy Castle, which would have sat between those two rocky outcrops on the other side there. And that was a native Welsh castle, a castle of the Welsh princes, and it had stood there for a good 500-600 years prior to the Edwardian conquest, but was levelled by Edward I when they first arrived.
A very clear statement. We're levelling your place and we're building our own.
That's
directly
it.
opposite it.
That's it, a physical statement to the local population.
Design elements at castles across Wales show this Savoyard style, so it isn't just Edward I putting his stamp on Wales, it's James of St George and his design team too. There are finials on the tower crenellations that are a flourish that James often used. More evidence of his influence can be seen in surviving clues that show how the round towers were built, and Ashley is going to show me how to spot them here at Conwy.
These are put log holes, and they are literally to put your log in. They are a piece of wood would have gone in here, and in this one up here, and one further up, and that would have been how you constructed the tower with an external scaffold. And the reason these are so important is because of the pattern. They're on an angle, and that's called a helicoidal style of scaffolding, which is very much indicative of French architecture.
These put-log holes are a tangible connection to the way this castle was constructed. James used a French method of winding scaffolding around the tower.
What would English scaffolding have looked like? Was that square?
It was, yes. It was a sort of rectilinear pattern around the outside, which is just a different choice, really. So this really does show that Savoy builders are on site.
James is here making this decision. This is how we're going to build this tower. I'm always amazed they don't fill in these holes.
Well, if you think about the amount of maintenance that's involved in a structure like this, all of these walls being whitewashed, repointing, all that sort of thing, it's important to keep them in place as long as you can, really, and keep using them year on year.
It's fascinating to be able to see that, though. 700 odd years ago, this was how they built this tower.
I'm also keen to understand how these huge blocks of stone were fashioned for James and his workforce to build Conwy with. I'm meeting back up with stonemasons Ben Macmillan to give it a go myself.
Would a medieval mason have recognised this set of tools?
Yes, I believe he certainly would have recognised this set of tools. We see on lots of medieval buildings we work on that the tooling marks are exactly the same as this.
So you almost know someone 800 years ago was doing exactly what you're doing today. And so how would they go from taking a block of stone, rough stone like this, and turning that into something nice that you might want to put into a castle?
So there's different types of stone. First, we're going to deal with rubble work. And with rubble work, which is the less fine end of the masonry, so we're just going to clear it crudely with this pitcher is the first way to do it. So we've drawn a line on here. Just want you to work your way down that, striking that pitcher with that hammer.
That's a terrifying moment.
Just a fraction steeper.
Fraction steeper.
Okay, and hit it hard. Next one. A little harder. Okay, stop there, we'll turn it over.
And would they be looking to do this to all four sides of a stone, or is this something you do just for the face of it?
You're just trying to get the face. So make sure you've got your right in the groove there. You see that groove? Yeah. So this is literally just dressing a new face on the stone. A little harder. Here we go.
Moment of truth.
Yeah, keep going. And then work back. There you go. Look at that. Marvellous. So that is crudely a new face. So now we're going to put that rough clearing tool down, put the hammer down, and we're going to take up the next one. Just rubble, but it still needs to have as fine a face as we can. So any high spots we're going to have, I just want you to take this is a mallet, I think in the medieval period they would have had heartwood. And all you've got to do is take those high points off and just try and create a little bit flatter. So if you just work that little bit, always work into the stone.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Getting there?
Pretty good. I mean, that's almost good to go in a wall. I mean, I might just take see that little bit there? We might just pitch that, if you pick the picture up, and just pitch that one more time up that way, and just create a bit of a sharper face there.
This is presumably where I shatter the entire piece.
Yeah, yeah. That's it, you've got it. There you go. So that is ready to go in a wall. So that is just a rough hewn rubble wall stone, ready to go in a bread and butter wall. Not a fine wall that's designed to be seen.
We can see the rubble stones in the walls here at Conwy, and they reveal the reality, in stone, of the medieval upstairs downstairs.
This is the Great Hall of Conwy Castle and the cellars beneath it, and it gives us a really good insight into how castles were put together. We can see the joist holes where the floor level would have been in the Great Hall, and the difference between the stone above, which was all for show, it was to be seen, and the stone below that no one would ever look at unless you were a servant. Above, we have a lovely curved arched window with seats either side and a big space to let in lots and lots of light. Directly below that, a narrowing window, purely functional. Upstairs, while people party and eat, they'd be kept warm by a roaring fire in this beautiful, huge fireplace. Directly below that, absolutely nothing.
Thanks for watching this video on the History Hit YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here to make sure you don't miss any of our great films that are coming out. Or if you are a true history fan, check out our special dedicated history channel, historyhit.tv. You're going to love it.